Hello everyone, it's Michael Lazar here, and welcome back to the channel, and in today's video, we are going to be starting our Learning the Tone series. Now quickly before we begin, I am going to be starting a beginner Byzantine chant course, so if you're interested, check out the link in the description down below. So, what is the first tone we're going to be learning about today? It is going to be Plagal First, hiermologic. So, let's unpack that a little bit. 1. If you have not seen my video on what is a tone, I highly recommend that you go watch that as a background. And if you have not watched my video on the diatonic scale, also go watch that. Both of those videos will be linked in the description down below. Plagal First, or tone 5, the words can be used interchangeably, when it's in the hiermologic form, is based on ke. Now I want to talk a little bit about the difference between the terminology Plagal First and tone 5. In this video, I'll be using them interchangeably, but Plagal First refers to the plagal, or 4 notes under the first mode. Now, if you look at modern Byzantine practices, first mode is usually based on pa, and plagal first mode is either based on pa or ke. But originally, the first mode was based on ke, and the plagal of the first mode was based on pa. So, the modern practice nowadays is to base tone 5, the hiermologic, on ke for the most part. Obviously, there are some variations, but for the most part, you're going to find tone 5 hiermologic is going to be on ke. So, let's look at this scale and see how to build tone 5 hiermologic from it. So, to best unpack the tone, I think it's best to go from the top down. So, if you look here, the top of any Byzantine score is going to show something like this. It says Ichos Plagios Proto, and then this means up 4 based on ke diatonic on pa. Let's explain what each of those mean. The first part is ichos, tone or mode. Plagios, pi lambda or pi lambda in English, is plagal. And then this, if you remember how I said that tone 1 used to be based on ke, this is the symbol for the ke that they used in the pikima for tone 1. So it's saying ichos plagal of 1, tone 1. This is saying that, but instead of starting on pa, we're going to be starting 4 notes higher on ke and using the diatonic on pa part of the scale. This element is called a thora, which means to corrupt, and it's saying that we're going to change the scale intervals. So instead of the diatonic on ke part of the scale being used, we're going to use the diatonic on pa part of the scale while staying on the ke pitch. So let's observe what that means, because a lot of times it's a little different to many people how to look at this transposition, but I think the best thing to do is just put them side by side. So here we have the diatonic scale, but I've extrapolated it out, so you have a little bit higher notes and a little bit lower notes. So starting with the lower half of the scale, the diatonic scale based on pa, going up from pa, has intervals of morea. Now, morea is the unit of interval in Byzantine chant. Now, again, if you haven't watched my diatonic scale video, remember, please go watch that now, or else none of this will make sense. The interval between pa and vu is 10 morea. The interval between vu and ra is 8 morea. The interval between ra di and the ke are both 12 morea. Now going backwards, pa and ni is 12 morea, and ni and zo is 8 morea. So it sounds like this. That's what that part of the scale sounds like. The ke part of the scale, if we extrapolate this out, has intervals that look very similar up here, right? 10, 8, 12, 12. Same thing down here. 10, 12. But we have a discrepancy here. The zo is 8 down, but the ra is 12 down. So if we actually sing it down, it'll sound like this. Ke di ra, instead of pa ni zo, meaning that the ra is a completely different pitch than what it should be. So in order to compensate for that, we simply attach these intervals in the place of these intervals, meaning that everything stays the same except for this interval here, which actually then becomes 8. So it really sounds like this instead. Kezoni pavu panizo ke. Also, another important reason why you don't want to use the diatonic on ke version of the scale is because the attractions used in the diatonic genre will apply to that portion of the scale, which will alter both the pitches of zo and ke. Because we know that in the diatonic scale, depending on where you are in the context of how you're moving, pitches can change. For example, if you're singing the diatonic scale in that area of the scale, ke, the ke zo, the zo becomes flat, or the ke zo ni zo. The ke becomes sharp and the zo becomes natural. So if you don't place it in this part of the scale, the attractions can actually greatly affect the intervals that you sing here. So how should you interpret it? This is what you've been waiting for. It should sound like this. Kezoni pavu panizo ke. It's pretty easy, right? Now, the next aspect of the diatonic scale, when it's used in this context, is where are we going to be stopping, right? Are we going to be stopping on any note in the scale, or are there certain cadence points that we should look at? Well, in Plagal First, the hiermologic on ke, the places we stop at are ke and ni. These are going to be the common stopping places. Now, there are a couple variations. Some hymns actually use a high pause as stopping point, but it's never used often. It's used very, very minimally, and it's usually used to bring out a certain part of the text. Usually, you're just going to see it cadence between ke and ni. So you might hear a hymn that sounds like this. Ke di ke zo ni zo ni ni zo ni zo ke. It might sound like that, right? But you're not really going to hear something sound like this. Ke papa ni zo ni papa, ke di ke. That's once in a while you might hear something like that, but it's very rare. Usually you just hear ke and ni. So now that we know how the scale sounds, how it's derived, and the common stopping points in the scale, it's important that we look at its use cases. So one, in orthros, it is used in God is the Lord. It is used in the resurrectional apolotikion. It is used in the kathismata. It is used in the avlogitaria, both for Sunday and for memorial services. It is used in the anavathmi. It is used in the, after the anavathmi, you have the prokimenon. It is used in the praises, if you use the brief setting of praises. And it is used in the doxology, if you use the brief setting of the doxology, as well as the Sunday Theotokion. So it has a lot of uses in orthros if you're serving orthros in tone 5. Vespers, same thing. It is used in the stichera for After Lord I've Cried. It is used in the apostica. It is used in the resurrection apolotikion. It is used in the Theotokion as well. And just remember that these are going to be the brief settings of Plagal First, so you'll see this. So things that use this are going to be quicker paced because of the hiermologic, and they're going to be the brief settings. Obviously, you can do the slower settings as well, but you're not going to use this. You're going to use a different variation of Plagal First mode. That's just an important distinction to make. So let's start with a piece of music. In this piece of music, it is the vesperal stichera. It's important to look at the structure of a hymn and kind of understand how it's built. So one thing you can look at is the ratio of cadences or stopping points. If you look here, it looks like in this piece it's about a 3-to-1 ratio of ke to ni. If you look here, it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1 to 2 ratio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. If you look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 5 to 2. If you look here, 1, 2, 3 to 1. If you look at it, most of the hymn is going to have stopping points on ke with occasional stopping points on ni, usually at a 3-to-1 or even 2-to-1 ratio. But that's kind of the average, right? It can always change depending on what words you want to bring out and also how you want to bring out the melody. So let's look at this one. This is actually an interesting hymn. So the reason why it's interesting is because it uses a lot of high knee cadences, and you get to kind of hear how they sound. So starting from the top, ka, how do you start it? The way I like to start Plagal First with the pichima, which is the phrase used to start a tone, is by singing this. Anes, kenizo keke. Some people might just do nes, but the important thing to do is to accent the ke, and if you can get the pitches around ke as well, it helps a lot just to get the tone in your ear, especially if you're singing with a choir. It just helps to really get everyone honed in together. So the next thing to look at is the actual music we're going to sing, the parlaim. It sounds like this. Ke di kezoni zo kezozoni ni pani zo kezoni zo keke. Di kezoni pani zo ni zo kezoni. Di kezozoni ni zo ke ni zo keke. From the bat, we can see that the range is heavily limited. It is between the, low the, and high ni, maybe high pa a little bit. It's usually going to be a range of around 4 to 6 notes. It's a pretty limited range. But the thing that's important, in order to keep the energy, because the music is not that rangy, you have to place the pitch at a decently high frequency, right? I hear a lot of people sing Plagal First mode based on D as the pitch. And it sounds like this. The guards were instructed by the lawless. And to me, that doesn't sound like Plagal First, because Plagal First on ke has a very certain energy to it. And to have that energy, you have to place it at a higher pitch, right? It sounds like this if you place it at a higher pitch. The guards were instructed by the lawless, conceal the resurrection of Christ. It sounds a lot more intense, and you can better emphasize the words you want to emphasize when you place it higher. So make sure that when you do sing this, don't make the mistake of placing it too low. I have a story. There was one time I was serving a Vespers, so it was a 2-sided choir, and we started the Kekargaria on G instead of A. We actually lowered it down to a G. And then the people on the other side of the choir, they couldn't handle it. So they did is lowered it down to a pa. And for the rest of the Kekargaria, it lost all of the energy because they lowered it down so low. Make sure that you not only train your range to be able to sing it, but that you also put it into practice. Remember, singing requires good technique. Whether you're singing Byzantine or opera or pop or romantic, any style of music you're going to sing, you should have good breathing support, and you should learn how to sing notes well correctly. In this case, because it's so high-pitched, you kind of want to lighten up your tone a little bit more. Not lighten it so much, but just a little less so it's not as aggressive. It doesn't need to be as heavy because it already is going to be shining because it's already at a higher pitch. And you want to make sure that whenever you're touching the notes, it's from above, not from underneath. If you sing from underneath, it'll sound like this. The guards were instructed by the lawless, conceal the resurrection of Christ. It sounds horrible. Versus, the guards were instructed by the lawless, conceal the resurrection of Christ. The difference is that every note is being approached from an upwards going down angle as opposed to a downwards going up angle. And when you change it, you actually get the energy you need, and you feel that you're on top of the pitches, and it feels a lot easier to sing. So that is the important thing with singing a hymn like this, or hymns that use this scale, is to make sure that you are not forgetting about your technique. The last important thing I want to bring to your attention with this tone is the placement of Ra. Remember, Ra should be sharp. It should sound like this. Ka di ra di ka. So if you put it together, it'll sound like this. Oh God, have mercy on us. Or even us. You can either make the zo flat at the end or natural, just depending on what sound you're going for. But the important thing I wanted to highlight here is this. mercy on us. It changes the sound too much. Oh God, have mercy on us. It loses that edge. Oh God, have mercy on us. Right? So just make sure you keep the ga sharp. So now that you understand Plagal First hiermologic mode, or tone 5 on K, now you can go out and learn more music. My recommendation is that if you want to learn the tones and maintain them, you need to go out and learn hymns that use it. It's not effective to learn the theory of a tone, but not to learn repertoire that reinforces it. So I have a lot of videos describing Plagal First hiermologic on K, and I'll link them in the description down below, and that way you can follow along with them and learn the music, and that way you can better understand the tone and memorize it. The last thing I want to talk to you about is the actual theses, which are the musical phrases that are used in this tone. There is a great book on St. Anthony's Monastery that outlines all the theses in each tone, stick hierarchy, and hiermologic genres, and I highly recommend that you read through it if you want to just see the possible examples of theses in each tone. But my personal experience has been that the best way to actually go out and learn the theses is to just go and sing more music. So remember, go out and sing the music, and you will better learn the tones. So I hope you found this video helpful. Again, this is the first video of learning the tone series. So if there's anything you'd like to see, please let me know, and I can make sure to implement it in the next video. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and to go join that Byzantine chant course. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one, and have a great day.